welcome back to episode 69 of Tall Boy Radio. 69, dude! Yeah, sorry, we had to get that out of our system. It is episode 69. It's not technically a milestone, but we're going to celebrate it anyway. So before we get onto the subject matter, let's say hello to the hosts. Who wants to go first?
Go on, Andy.
Howdy. On the words of Waterboy, some quality H2O. Yeah, still trying to recover, so yeah, I'll drink some water. Ice water.
Ooh.
Pushing about out of it.
Yes. Gaza?
Yeah, hi guys. Good to be back after hosting the last one. Looking forward to this. I'm drinking another of my TBR favourites, which is Garden, which possibly is being surpassed by Leffe as my favourite drink. And I'm rocking the official TBR podcast glass, and also for those of you that are watching YouTube, the official TBR t-shirt, bit of merch to go with it. So yeah, looking forward to this. Let's see where we go.
Top man. Now, one of the criticisms I've had on here is I do enjoy a dark beer. My brother got in contact with us and said, well, if you enjoy a dark beer, why aren't you drinking the king of dark beers, Guinness? So tonight I have got myself a little bit of Guinness, but not just any Guinness, of course. It's the Guinness Foreign Extra, which is brewed in Nigeria, so it's a little bit stronger. It's the export style, and I've got to be honest, it is a good one. I do enjoy this one. You can probably tell I'm still suffering from a little bit of a cold, and it will soothe the throat. So before we get started, who has any shout outs that they'd like to do?
Only to I say one of our TBR regular listeners, who is my daughter Amy, who loves true crime, serial killers. I'm a bit concerned about that actually, but hey ho. Yeah, she genuinely, if I'd have let her, would have come on to the podcast and spoken about whoever it may be. So yeah, just big shout out to Amy. She loves this type of thing. She loves this type of genre. So shout out to her. Other than that, just the normal people that sort of retweet us, the normal sort of Twitter followers and stuff, the Twitter family, showing the love, sharing the love and stuff. So nobody really specific. But yeah, let's go from there.
Cool. Andy?
No. Just the usual people. There you go.
Well, I'll tell you what then, if Gaz is going to give a shout out to his daughter, then it's only right and it's only proper then that I should give a shout out to my second born. I'm going to wish him a happy birthday, because this episode drops, if I've done my maths right, on the Friday, and it's his birthday on the Sunday, which is the 23rd. So happy birthday, JJ. Have a good one too. We're going to do something for you, because basically he spent his first birthday in lockdown. Nobody's allowed to come and visit him. So he sat there on his billy, which, to be honest, he'll probably enjoy a hell of a lot more than he will on this one, because he's very much happy with his own company. God bless him. But we can't say happy birthday to JJ without first acknowledging that the little rascal hung on into the womb 29 minutes too long, and also wish a happy birthday to Stephen Patrick Morrissey, who was born the day before him, and whose birthday we will be celebrating on. The wife has a theme plan for it. I want it to be a Morrissey theme. She's having none of it, but nonetheless, happy birthday, Morrissey. So, you
69, dude.
Thank you, man. It's actually, I think it's 62. Just for the record. JJ was born on his 60th, the day after his 60th birthday. Should have been on his 60th birthday. So, as Gaz alluded to earlier, as we move on and gloss over these indiscretions, we're going to do a episode on unsolved crimes. So we're going to talk about 3 crimes, and we're going to try and cram them into an hour, as we often do 3 episodes crammed into one, and talk about 3 crimes that have affected the nation, that have been wormed their way into our minds, and we're going to talk about those and look at the basic information behind them. So, who would like to go first and introduce the first unsolved crime that has resonated with us?
Go on, Andy. You go first. I generally go first, so you can go first. Get it?
So I've gone with the Zodiac killer on this one. So obviously I've heard about it through life and stuff like that, but I didn't really know loads about it. And I think for me the big intrigue is the fact that he's still not caught. You know, I could have gone for Jack the Ripper and all that again, but I think with the Zodiac killers, it was all the taunting he did. Yeah, so I went with that. There you go. I mean, for me, he's wrote letters that had to be deciphered and stuff like that. Then in the letters, it's all like grammar errors, like saying paradise with a C and stuff like that. And it's just like, is this guy like really clever, or is he just like some average guy who just knows how to bend the rules, bend the law a bit, and would he be able to do that sort of stuff today? I don't know, with all the cameras and stuff.
I don't know whether he'd have got away with it today with all of the. I remember seeing there was a film. Was it Jake Gyllenhaal in it? Was it Jake Gyllenhaal? Was it? He was the Zodiac killer. Was he in it? Robert Downey Jr. Was he in it?
Possibly.
Sure
I'm guessing Kevin Spacey was in it if you watched it.
I don't know whether he might have made a cameo. I don't remember seeing it, but I'm pretty sure it's Robert Downey Jr. and I want to say Jake Gyllenhaal. Obviously maybe a couple of other people, but if that's relatively true to the story, then was it picked up by a journalist, and then did he send various notes? Like over a period of years maybe that he sent them to the Post or whatever the newspaper was, I think, from memory. As I say, I don't know. The film was okay. It's a little bit of a slow burner, if I'm honest, but not. I suppose when you look at it from actually it's a real life true crime thing, then it's probably a little bit better. But it was a bit of a slow burner, the film, if I'm honest.
So how many people were killed then by the Zodiac killer? Do we know?
He's claimed 37, but investigators are saying 7.
Okay.
Quite a varying sort of number. Maybe it bigs it up more than it actually was, but it's all like a similar period as well, like 69, coincidentally.
Was it
69?
Yeah, December 20th, 69. July 69, September 69. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Fair play. And am I right in saying then in terms of who he is purported to be, his son has recently written a book outing him. Is his son a police officer and has said that he believes that his father was the Zodiac killer? Is that right?
I think that does ring a bell. Funnily enough, I don't know if I've got him on my list. I've written 3 people down for some reason, and like one of them was like a friend of theirs saying, "Oh, it was this guy," and there's another guy who supposedly looks just like the photo fit sort of thing. But once everyone's dying, they all claim to be someone famous, I suppose.
Something I'll keep in mind then. So go on, tell us who those 3 people are then, who you think that could be the Zodiac killer.
So we've got Arthur Lee Allen. Some true crime author who wrote a couple of books thought it was this guy, and he died in 92, and he was never connected with that area or deaths. So I don't know what evidence there was of that. There's Earl Van Best Jr. This was the guy's son who turned around saying it was him, because he bears a strong resemblance to the man in the police sketch, which he looks like a generic person anyway. Big glasses, generic hair. Then we've got Louis Myers as well.
Michael's brother.
Yeah. Apparently, this guy on his deathbed turned around saying to his friend, "Oh yeah, I'm the Zodiac killer." I personally think whoever did it would have done a letter about it or something like that. They wouldn't have just turned around telling the friend, "Oh yeah, it was me." They would have done a big show and a dance about it. If he's there, like with these letters taunting people.
So do you think he's still alive then?
No, I think he'd be too old now. He must have been like in his 30s back then. So if you think about 50 years ago, maybe, so 80s now, and with COVID and stuff like that, the chances are a bit slimmer. But even last year, I think code breakers have had another go at his letters, and I think like this one here was in 2020.
Apparently, that's the dude, is it?
Move it to the left a bit so you're in the same view.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Hold on.
If you're watching on YouTube, you're basically seeing Gaz holding up a picture of himself.
I am only 47 years old. I only just shit. Maybe I was a Zodiac killer.
But yeah, the last letter that was deciphered, well, in 2020 was, I think it was already deciphered, but they've had another go at it. Yeah. You read it and it's proper weird, like how it's written. It's I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it'll send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my life will be an easier one in paradise death. So it sounds like it's like a simple person who's
that isn't written by someone who seems to have the most poetic of minds, is it really?
No.
Yeah. No. And maybe he's that clever. He's thought, to write like this and throw people off. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
Do you think he is trying to like almost like dumb that down to throw people off the fact that he's highly educated or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, he's got to like. Apparently, he had a 408 symbol cipher that they used to try and break this code, and it's a fair few characters. That.
So he must be relatively educated then, if that's the case. If he's writing in the cipher that obviously, the FBI can't sort of can't solve, or the various police departments can't solve. So he must be relatively switched on, this guy.
Yeah, 408 symbol cipher. That must be more complicated than the Enigma code, surely.
Yeah. I don't know what the Enigma code was, whatever. But yeah, it's relatively complex for our simple minds, I suspect.
Too complicated for TBR.
Absolutely. Maybe that's a strapline moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. So what is it then, Andy, that fascinated you then about this case? What drew you in?
I think it's just doing the letters and then having to be deciphered. I think that's obviously showing some sort of intelligence. But when you read about the murders, it's not, a lot of them don't seem to be calculated. It's like he just gets in a taxi and just murders his driver and then gets out and walks off.
Yeah.
Or he goes to some beauty spot and just kills whoever's there, like two people, and walks off. It's just like it's random. Like, I mean,
that was the thing that I remember when I watched the film. There was like a couple effectively making out and stuff, and he just rocks up, pulls up next to them, and then just like butchers them or whatever, or shoots them, and then like he's at a crossroads, and does he get in a taxi, and then I think I'm pretty sure there's something to do with it's like a set of keys or a pocket or something, and they couldn't figure out why he'd gone from like the front seat to the back seat or gone across, or there was something to do with the taxi, and he got in and basically and it was just an absolutely random MO that his MO just changed all the time, and I think that's what perhaps to the police officers that they didn't seem as though there was a sort of a thing that tied them all together, if you know what I mean. There wasn't a consistency in his MO. He literally just went, he'd shoot some people, he'd butcher somebody, did he strangle somebody or so? But there were various sort of MOs that I think threw them off the case, I think, so.
Was that it then? Was that the randomness of it that made it so confusing, that it was so difficult to predict, and yet the letters were there to confuse?
I suspect so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, because they always say like most murders aren't. Well, in the UK, they always say a lot of murders aren't. They're not always pre-planned, but they're normally not like totally random. They're normally, a close relative or someone you've had an argument with, or it's someone you've got major beef with and stuff like that. Whereas these murders, like you look at their ages, they're all different, like late teens, early 20s. Locations are all random. Yeah, and I think the first letter saying like he likes killing people. It's more fun than killing a wild game. And it's just like, is that just it? Maybe he just likes to kill people.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think it's just intriguing.
Just reading here, just had a quick look on Google. It was saying that was it a 340.
And Gaz has gone just like that. Oh, he's back.
Has been broken by a team from the United States, Australia, and Belgium. Apparently, so there are obviously people have sort of cracked the cipher. I don't know what that necessarily means as such, but
you think with all today's technology, the case apparently is still open. So you'd think they'll just go through it all and any DNA or something like that, or any letters. You think they'll have another crack at it?
Yeah.
So do you think this one then will be ultimately solved through the letters?
No. He's too clever for that, I think. Unless he's still alive. Do you think genuinely
is it? Do you think he'll be obviously very old now, but do you think it'll never come to it was actually this guy or this woman or whatever?
For my opinion, would be they once they do die, they would release a letter or something like that, and it does say, or a coded one or whatever. But you don't know; they might die by prematurely or something like that, and they never got around to writing anything. I don't know.
So, I mean, certainly as a serial killer, Gaz held up his picture there. He fits the bill. He's white and he's male. That's predominantly all serial killers are, interestingly enough. And that's the curious part of that nature. Yeah. So we've looked there at the Zodiac killer. That is one unsolved crime. Gazza, do you want to chuck yours out there next? Because yours is also an equally famous case that you wanted to talk about, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we sort of mentioned unsolved crime and stuff, and the one that massively resonated with me was the disappearance
of Gaz from the recording.
Yeah, the disappearance of Gaz from the recording, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, he's back.
He's back, Gazza. Go on. We lost you there for a second.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So the disappearance of Madeleine McCann really was the one that I sort of wanted to talk about, and it resonated with me just because when it first happened, which was, I mean, she disappeared on 3rd of May 2007, so it was huge, and I mean like absolutely massive. It was pretty much every country in the world, it seemed as though was on the Madeleine McCann case, and it was actually described by the Daily Telegraph as the most heavily reported missing person case in history, which when you think about perhaps previous cases, you think, wow, okay, and I got a bit intrigued by it. I think because I've got a couple of daughters, obviously, regular podcasters will know, and Madeleine McCann would have been similar age to my eldest. Maybe she's 18 months, maybe a couple of years older than my eldest daughter. But I sort of having been on holiday with my daughters and stuff. So just various things about the story just intrigued me. And why has it never been solved? And that was the thing that I sort of can't get my head around in a relatively modern era. So, moving on from Andy, Zodiac killer, which was sort of late 60s, early 70s, whatever, 2007, DNA is around and CCTV is around and all of these things that modern day police forces use to catch criminals, yet it remains unsolved. And I know that the German authorities think think last year, 2020, maybe, did they name another suspect, or I don't know, they arrested somebody for it, but it just a whole. I watched it. I watched the documentary on Netflix, and I've read quite a bit about it. And if I'm honest, it just doesn't sit right with me. There's things about the story, and I'm not here to cast aspersions on, Jerry McCann or whatever, but I just there's just things about the story that they just don't quite sit right with me. Why would you leave your kids in a room? Why would you fail to use a babysitting service? Why would you, if you think your daughter's been sort of kidnapped, abducted, whatever, why would you then run out of an apartment, leaving 2 other kids in there? Just questions that remain a bit unsolved, if I'm honest. And I think that's why it piques my interest in, as much as they absolutely did not question Jerry and Kate McCann, who are the parents initially. They just weren't in the police's sort of radar. And then after a while, and I remember somebody likening it to a tsunami. They said, at some point, if you carry on going down the road you're going down, the press will turn. And they said it's like a tsunami. So the tide goes out, and then it comes in, or it comes in and it goes out, sort of thing. They will turn on you. And from being people who were obviously, I say, victims of the crime, they were the mother and father, they then became absolutely right bang smack in the middle of, you now are a suspect for the crime. And I remember watching it first time round, thinking, as a parent, parent of 2 daughters, like what I potentially would go through if that happened to me. If I went on a holiday and then went back to the apartment and one of my daughters wasn't there, you'd be like, oh, like, how can that even happen? And I remember putting myself through that hell. But then I remember thinking, but I wouldn't leave them there in the first place. Like, I wouldn't do that. And particularly when you read the accounts where they say that apparently the day of before she went missing, Madeleine said, why did you not come back to the apartment? Basically when her and her brother were crying. So they were on about the night before. It was like, so why did you not come back to the apartment when we were crying? And you're like, really? If your kid had said that, would you then leave them the following night on their own? So I'm not casting dispersion on Jerry and Kate McCann, and am I saying they've done it? No. Am I saying they've not done it? No. I just think there were failings on the Portuguese police, if I'm honest, from their response to the initial request for assistance, and it's a bit different in Portugal. There's 2 different levels of policing. I don't know whether it's a bit like our community police, and then the real police as such, but they have 2 different sort of police forces. They have more of a local gendarmerie as such, and then they have like the equivalent of the Metropolitan Police, for want of a better phrase. So it's and the local police arrived a couple of hours after, but the whole story about, well, we went to the tapas bar, and then we got up and we went to look for our kid, and then we sat down, and then we got up and then went to sit down, and just so many inaccuracies about the whole story. I just don't think we've got to the bottom of exactly what's happened. And then obviously the thing for me, they brought a couple of sniffer dogs in, and one of the dogs was trained just to sniff for cadavers, human cadavers. That was the thing. So not decaying meat, not blood, not anything else, just cadavers. That's it. And it went mental in part of the apartment, and it also went mental when it was looking at part of the car. And then they brought a blood dog in that was not trained to sniff cadavers, but it's trained to sniff for human blood. It could distinguish between animal blood and decaying meat and this, that, and the other, and it still went mental. So you're thinking something's gone on in that apartment. Like both dogs and the dog expert who's had like 25, 30 years worth of experience in dealing with these things, he said they wouldn't give effectively a false negative. They're not just going to bark or point or whatever for no reason. They're going to do it because there's something there. And both these dogs effectively sort of gave positive results. And you're like how can that be? Like why? You know, there's the 48 questions that Kate McCann failed to answer when she was questioned for 11 hours. And okay, 11 hours of questioning, yeah, it's quite intensive. But there's 48 questions she failed to answer. Well, why? Why would you fail to answer them? You know, so it proper sort of piqued my interest in terms of, could it be the parents? And yes, it could be, because a lot of abductions and a lot of stuff that goes on is family members or people that the victims know. So yeah, it could be. And then you start looking at a couple of the other people that were in the tapas group. So there's a lady, was it Elizabeth Tanner, and she saw a man carrying a baby allegedly walking across the street. But then Jerry McCann's went to look for the check on the kids, and he saw a member of the public, and they had a conversation, but neither of him or the member of the public remembers seeing this other guy. But then when you corroborate their story, they're literally 30 seconds to a minute apart. So would they not have seen him? You know, there's so many things that just don't quite add up. And again, you read a little bit and they talk about, well, did Kate McCann not necessarily drug Madeleine, but did she give us effective Calpol to make her go sleep? Did they sort of sedate her and this, that, and the other? And why was the blind moved and why was the window open? And there's just like a lot of conjecture. And in a way, I don't know where I stand on it. There's definitely questions that I would like to ask Kate and Jerry McCann, but then there's definite questions I'd like to ask the Portuguese police. You know, why did they delay in coming? If that, you know, sort of things. Sorry, Ed, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, taking you back then to your first point there, and this is the bit that always resonates with me in terms of, like you say, this is probably the most famous missing person case in history.
Yeah.
So why was the nation so bought into this from the offing? Because, like you say, it was questionable in terms of how the children were all left alone. And you know, different cases, given the nature of the people involved here, two doctors, two people that were respected. You know, normally, if this was just two scratics, you would be questioning them. You'd be saying, "Why would you leave your children alone?" Nobody does that. So how did this suddenly become the most notorious case of a missing person in history?
A simple answer is I don't know. I wonder whether or not, I say, the human aspect of it, that it's a young girl, it's the paternal instinct, maternal instinct in a lot of people that were reporting out, oh my God, if I was in that situation. But then again, you know, when you watch the Netflix documentary, you know, there were lots of Portuguese families who had children go missing and stuff, and they never got the coverage that Madeleine McCann got, and they were like, if I'd have got the coverage that Madeleine McCann got, maybe my son, daughter would have been found and stuff. So why? Genuinely, I don't know. Is it because a lot of the public think that there's no smoke without fire, and therefore was it Jerry and Kate McCann, and did they do it? And I'm not saying I necessarily subscribe to that, but like, why were there never any solid suspects? Why were there never any why did they never arrest anyone? Why did they? Do you know what I mean? They just.
Do you think that's the case, and that's where the interest builds? In terms of when the media is so heavily involved like this, there's a high proportion of those cases, and I'm not suggesting this is one of them, but there's a high proportion of those cases that it turns out that is somebody who's known to the family, in this case, the parents who've been involved. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second, like Gaz isn't suggesting for 1 second, that they are, but is that where the media interest existed?
I think so, because you've got effectively a group of friends that they've gone on holiday together. They're sitting in a bar. Their daughter has said perhaps previously, "Why did you not come the night before?" Effectively to check on us. We were crying. Why did you not come? The following night, they still leave them in the room on their own. Why, if Madeleine had been abducted, why did you not then ask the other two children that were in the room, what did they see? Why did you not wake them up and say, did you not hear anything? Did you not see anything? Did you not? Because that question wasn't asked. Well, you would ask that, wouldn't you?
100%.
If there were other people in the room, you'd be like, well, what did you see? Even if there are any. So just inaccuracies. And I know, was it Robert Murat that was, he was sort of centre attention at one point. He was effectively a local that, it wasn't local in terms of Portuguese, but he lived there and he could interpret. So he effectively put himself point of centre, sort of, I'm going to be a family liaison officer. I'm going to interpret this. I'm going to interpret that. And he was questioned quite severely, really, in terms of being a suspect. And actually, he spoke on the documentary about that and the fact that obviously he was then not acquitted. That's the wrong phrase, but he was then ruled out effectively. And I know the German police, as I say, I think last year, 2020, maybe, I think the German police they've pretty much come out and said that they believe that actually she's dead, and and I want to say that they I don't know if they named the person, but I'm pretty sure they said that they had a suspect again. But Metropolitan Police, I think, dialed back the sort of their involvement maybe sort of 4 or 5 years ago. But I think it's one of those, not quite in the Lord Lucan style, but I think it's one of those. It's gonna, until there is that body that is discovered, if she is indeed dead, she might be alive, and here's hoping that she is, and that if she is alive, I say she's happy, and is she ever going to be reunited with her mum and dad? Hopefully, and there's a happy ending and stuff. But if, like the majority of people, you believe that she actually is dead, then until that body turns up and there's DNA and there's this, that, and the other, then I think I don't know whether really we're ever going to get an answer, if I'm honest.
What's your take on this one then, Andy? Obviously, Gaz has sort of shared his opinions and his thoughts on this one. What's your take on this one?
I have a weird stance on a lot of crime, as in, like, if in America, if someone enters your property, you've got every right to defend yourself and do whatever. Whereas in this country, if someone enters your property and you hurt them, then you're getting done for it. So I always think, like, that it's the initial, the initial breaking of the law should be looked at. So in this instance, they've left the kids multiple times throughout this holiday. And if they don't find someone, I generally felt like they should have, been a suspect earlier and said, well, we don't know what's happened to your kid or whatever. And, granted, they've got to live with that throughout their lives. But I still think, like, they should have been trialed and maybe jailed for a while, or house arrest for a while, or something like that. In regards to, like, all the press coverage, I wonder whether it was because she was quite because she was a blonde-haired little girl, but then she had like a split pupil or something in her eye, didn't she?
Yeah,
so
there's like a little defect in her eye. Yeah.
So whether she stood out because of that, the German guy last year that got caught. I think he was a known paedophile in the area at the time, but I think he left like as it was getting investigated, all that stuff. Left that area of Portugal. They were saying. I've not kept up to date with that stuff. I just remember them saying, "Oh, he might be linked to it and all this stuff." But I'm sure the dates are well off when he was in his trial or whatever. But I don't know. Like I say, to the find the body, it's just going to be going around in circles.
Certainly the German fellow, and I can't recall his name, but I know he was investigated at the time, and it was felt that he didn't have a case to answer to. But again, is that the case that the Portuguese police didn't do a thorough enough job on that one?
Possibly, and I'm not I'm not casting dispersions on the wherefores and what falls of Portuguese policing, but it did seem as though there was a little bit of a delay in getting to the scene, a little bit of a delay in the communication in terms of to their polizia judicial or whatever, which is the equivalent of their like FBI or whatever it is. So I do think that there were various things that were let slip just in terms of Madeleine went missing, and within an hour and a half, whatever, a dozen people had trampled through the apartment, and crime scenes had been destroyed effectively. And now, whether or not that's the parents' fault, the police's fault, where does it lie? If I was a parent and I thought that somebody had abducted my daughter, which is a horrendous thought, by the way, obviously with a dad of two girls, would I let somebody then walk through that crime scene? Would I be switched on enough to think, no, I don't need to walk through there because it's a crime scene and I don't want it spoiled for the police? Or would I be like, oh my God, and I'd be frantic and I'd let anybody in? So I can understand how maybe in the moment that things got a bit jumbled and things got a bit muddled and stuff. I just fundamentally, I just can't get past A, why would you leave your kid? B, if you felt as though Madeleine had been abducted, why would you leave your other two kids in the room and run back to the tapas bar to say Madeleine had been abducted? Well, if you thought she'd been abducted, why would you leave your two kids in the room? Just certain things that just don't quite sit. And was it mild panic, blind panic? But yeah, maybe, potentially, yeah. But the timeline of events from them, I remember one guy said it was a bit like an opera. It's like you get up, you sit down, you get up, you sit down. They had this timeline of they would go and check on their kids, didn't they, every 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, and literally they said that they could see the apartment from where the tapas bar was, but actually you could only see the roof, you couldn't see the doors. So there's inconsistencies in what they were saying, and I don't know. I hope we get to a point where we find out, and that isn't necessarily we find out that actually she's died. I hope we get to the point where we find out that she's alive and she's reunited. I don't think that'll be the case, but I hope that's the case. I hope that we finally get an answer, because actually it is the biggest single missing person, certainly that I can remember.
Oh, 100%. 100%. My thoughts on this one is there's a known timeline, but I also think in every case, if you've ever watched, and I apologize for making this analogy, any crime documentary where the case has been solved, they'll share an unknown timeline, the information that isn't known to the public, that the police keep to themselves. Yeah. And I just feel that on that day in Portugal, there were known people There were known people in and around Praia de Luz that were being monitored or not monitored by the police. And this German individual who they all of a sudden people are focusing on and people are talking about, if he is now centre of the investigation, he's not there for any reason out of just been plucked out of randomness. It's a case of there's been, police have informants, and there's a known informant, a trusted informant who's given information to suggest this individual is involved. And I just feel that just might be the case in this one. Will we get an answer? I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's too many people that know too many things about this case for it at some point not to come out, if that makes sense. I mean, you've got a tapas 7, so you got the 7 people that were around that table that were coming and going and checking on kids and not checking on kids, and you got the tanners that one of them allegedly saw somebody carrying a kid, but then later on there was another couple, not from the tapas 7 but from somewhere else, that saw somebody carrying a kid, but then did that person not come forward to say, yeah, it was me, I was carrying my son, daughter, whatever, so there's all this conjecture about it, and you know what, will we ever find out? I don't know. I hope we do, because as I say, I think it's the biggest sort of missing person. Do I think we will? No, probably not. And I think it might go down as genuinely one of the biggest unsolved crimes that certainly my generation.
So, are we ready to chuck out case number 3?
Go on then, dude.
Are you? No, my case. This is one that's fascinated me since I watched a program on the Discovery Channel with Brad Meltzer about 4 or 5 years ago, and I have been absolutely obsessed and fascinated by this case. Are you guys familiar with the case of D.B. Cooper?
I'm not. No.
Andy?
I don't think so.
Well, D.B. Cooper, and this is a media misleading, because actually he never used the name D.B. Cooper. He used the name Dan Cooper when he checked onto Flight 305. And this is the only unsolved air piracy case in commercial aviation history. Does that pique your interest?
Air piracy.
Air piracy. Does that pique your interest?
Okay.
So the 24th of November 1971, a gentleman checked himself onto a plane, and he checked himself on, and this obviously the checks back then were a lot less severe as they are now, and he checked himself on using a pseudonym of Dan Cooper. And the flight was going from Portland, Oregon to Seattle Tacoma Airport, which is about a 30-minute flight. And on the plane, he ordered himself a bourbon and Sprite. So already he's got a little bit of respect because he's ordering himself a bourbon. And partway through the flight, he handed a note to the air stewardess. And she just assumed it was a businessman cracking onto her and didn't think too much about it. So she just shoved this note into her pocket. And he leant over to her and said, "Miss, you better look at that. I have a bomb." So she took the note out, and obviously, she eventually came and sat next to him as he'd requested. And in his briefcase, he showed her what appeared to be a bomb. And he was calm, he was polite, he was well spoken. And ultimately, what he requested was the plane were to land at the airport in Seattle. And at that point, he would allow everybody else on the plane, I think there was 39 passengers that day, to alight. And once they'd loaded the money on which he'd requested, which I think was a sum of around about, I think it was, I want to say 20,000, I'll check my notes shortly, dollars onto the plane. And he also requested 4 parachutes, 2 regular parachutes and 2 backup parachutes, which is quite unusual. So anyway, the plane landed, the passengers were allowed to alight, and the police allowed the money onto the plane, and they allowed the parachutes, and they took off again, and they headed for Reno, which is in Nevada. But I mean, when the plane landed, that was another subject whatsoever, because he made another request while he was on board. He requested that the staff all were to go to the cockpit, and that the plane were to be slowed to a certain speed, and that the landing gear were to be lowered while he was flying. And while all the staff were there, a light lit up in the cockpit, and it was saying that the doors at the back of the plane, and that was the unusual thing about this commercial plane. No, it's not a commercial plane, sorry, that the passenger plane, then it had a rear entry to it. And it said that the staircase at the rear of the plane had lowered during the flight. And when they landed, this individual was not on the plane. And neither were the parachutes, sorry, and neither was the money. At some point during that flight, he had jumped out over Oregon and parachuted to alleged safety. Is this a case that you guys are aware of?
Yeah, now you've said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So yeah, it is. Yeah. So I'm checking my notes. So it's actually $200,000. So, and the interesting thing about this is that no body was ever found. No body was ever
parachuted
found.
off a plane with effectively a bag full of money.
$200,000. Yeah.
Nobody was found.
Nobody was found.
Were the parachutes ever recovered from the ground, or
the parachutes were not recovered? Part of the money, interestingly enough, has been recovered. It was recovered in the muddy waters of the river, which was, I think it was about 20 miles downstream to roughly the spot where he had jumped from.
Right.
So the question is, first of all, did he survive the jump?
Yes.
Yes.
Unless he landed in the water.
Well, that's the thing, because some of that, but interestingly enough, all the money that was handed over that day, they made a note of the serial numbers, and none of that money has ever been spent. So that is why the question arises: was he successful in his attempt?
So none of those notes were used.
So they say, and this is the thing, because the way that any system works, those serial numbers are only ever recorded, in terms of if it is sent back as an unused note, an unusable note, sorry. So if it's spent and it's in a dirty state, it will be sent back when it's banked as an unusable note. So the serial numbers won't be recorded. Usable notes, they are when they're banked. So those notes never technically turned up. That's not to say that they weren't spent and they weren't used, but certainly there's been no record of those notes being spent. However, there is also a number of records of possibilities of who this individual is. Are you interested to hear about them?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a gentleman by the name of Robert Rackshaw, and he was dismissed as a subject because he was too young at the time, and he also had a history of parachute jumping and had also tried to commit a crime which is very, very similar to this, and he was arrested upon it later, and it was sort of presumed that he had also done this crime and was then having another go at creating himself a little bit more of an opportunity. Another individual was the name of Walter Recker. Now, he claimed to be D.B. Cooper on his deathbed, and he was in the 82nd Airborne, and he was a paratrooper, and he died at the age of 80 in 2014. And he went on to become a high-level covert agent for the intelligence operatives. And his best friend had recorded his confessions on tape on his deathbed to say that he was indeed this individual, D.B. Cooper. Is that bizarre, or is that bizarre?
So what did they do with the 200,000? And if he died on his deathbed claiming to this guy, where's the 200 grand gone?
There's no explanation for this, and this is the thing. And this well, quite possibly, yeah. He's done it the Father Ted way, but yeah, this is the thing with this chap. Nobody knows where this money went. So did he spend it? But this chap then allegedly went on to become a secret operative, which is just fascinating in itself. It almost sounds too fictional to be true, doesn't it?
So he jumped out of a plane with a second backup parachute. He harnessed the money to a parachute and also had a second backup parachute on the money. Yeah, Nobody was found. The money wasn't found. The parachutes weren't found.
No, and the area of, I mean, to be fair, the area that he parachuted into is very dense forest. So there's
Well, you'd have
distinct
thought they would have found the canopy of the parachute, or you'd have thought they'd have found something.
Well, this is the thing, and on the day
Did he
in
definitely do
question-
it, or was it just did
Well,
people visibly see him jump out the plane or whatever?
no,
Or what?
well, this is the thing. Nobody saw him jump out of the plane. There is just an assumption that he jumped because of the lights that flashed up. But obviously, when they landed in Reno,
He
Nevada,
wasn't there, yeah.
that the plane was thoroughly searched, and the only people on board were the crew. Now, he might very well been an illustrious individual who's escaped there, but in all likelihood, it's somebody who parachuted out the back of that plane, and that the money was never ever found. And this one has fascinated me because it's, in terms of an unsolved crime. You know, we looked at the other two cases, and there are a number of victims. And I'm not going to suggest for a second that the airline wasn't a victim having to pony up that amount of money, because they were, but no lives were lost in this one. And it's a fascinating case, and it's one that I don't think, certainly in the UK, is particularly well known.
I didn't know about it, I must admit. I mean, my interest is piqued just in terms of if he did jump and he was on the plane, how was he not discovered when he landed, or at least evidence of him landing? Why? How was that not discovered? That's
Well, he jumped into dense forest, so the possibility is, and a lot of people believe in all likelihood that he never made that landing. That the area that he landed in, it probably wasn't possible to survive. And somewhere deep in that wilderness, there's a body that's been consumed by bears, which are prevalent in that area, and it's just never ever been found. However,
I still can't get over it. And I take your point that a body could be consumed by various carnivorous animals in the wilderness or whatever, but can a parachute canopy? Not sure.
Pretty large piece of cloth, isn't
it? Yeah, at some point, somebody, somewhere, somehow, some drone, plane, satellite, plane, whatever it may be, is going to see that at some point.
And this is the thing, in terms of Walter Recker's family, they recall him, and this is around Thanksgiving as well. So it was a time that maybe you wouldn't necessarily recall what they were doing on the 21st of July or the 7th of July, but you would recall what you were doing around those celebrated holidays. And they do recall him being absent for a couple of days and turning up somewhat flustered and having a conversation with his brother and being in a very private state and sharing information that nobody was privileged to. So that indeed adds a little bit of questions around it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that case, I have to admit. But now you've mentioned it, absolutely, it's an unsolved true crime case. So what did so the notes that went missing, they had serial numbers of all of those, and not one of those has been used. Is that what you're saying?
Other than the ones that turned up in the river, that
okay.
I think it was a matter of maybe $5,000-$10,000 turned up in the river, and they were partial notes, so they weren't the complete notes. Obviously, this was maybe 20 years later, and they were found, and obviously, the serial number being on both sides of the notes. These related to this, and obviously a number of people have gone looking for that treasure, assuming that he never made it, never landed it. A lot of people will go treasure hunting for that amount of money, because it's no small amount of money, is it really?
Yeah,
$200,000, even in this day and age.
Worth finding, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's better than a scratch card win. But yeah, so a number of people have gone looking for that, and it was one of these individuals who'd found in the muddy rivers of, I forget which river it was, but had come across the notes, and when they were cross-referenced, showed the reference numbers.
So were the notes found in? Was it like a satchel? Was it like a box? Was it?
No, they were just loose. They were just loose in the mud, and obviously that's what, which is why they were so damaged at the time. Now, obviously, when they were taken, they would have been in a satchel attached to his body as he jumped from the back of the plane.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So where's that money then?
Well, that's the question. Has it ever been spent? The assumption is if you think that money was dirty and damaged from the jump, they could have been passed as unused notes as it was banked back into the central mint, or it could be the case that somewhere sat in somebody's attic or sat in somebody's cellar, there is a stack of money that somebody didn't have the bottle to spend.
No, that's the fantasy of the story, isn't it? Is that somewhere there's just a pile of money sitting there.
It is, and that's what I love about this story, because it is the completely unknown. And certainly nobody truly knows, did he jump from the back of the plane? The assumption is that he must have done, because he wasn't there in Reno when the plane was searched. But certainly after the point when he jumps out the back of that plane, nobody knows whether he survived. Nobody knows whether he lived. Nobody knows whether he went on to spend that money, and nobody knows if that money is still there available to be found to this date.
That's quite cool, actually.
That
genuinely is like a not who done it and stuff, but that's a genuine conundrum, isn't it? That's a
it's a work of fiction that actually happened.
It sounds like it could be like the fourth Hangover film. A guy gets smashed in Vegas. It just goes on like a 24-hour bender.
Yeah, absolutely.
Open up his underpants.
The plot from the first three Hangover films are actually slightly more likely than that film. That actually happening.
Yeah. You're probably more likely to meet Mike Tyson with a tiger as opposed to finding this dude 200k, whatever it is.
Absolutely, and I do enjoy that story. I don't think it's. I bought a couple of books actually off Amazon, and I've read them, and they don't offer any other insight into other than these two individuals. However, it's another one that I would like to know the conclusion to, and it's the same with the Madeleine McCann story, and the same with the Zodiac killer. We're fascinated because we know that the likelihood is we'll never have an answer to it.
And I think you're right. I think as much as we might like to think that we know what the outcome will be, but we know what our own mind thinks. Are Kate and Jerry guilty? Are they innocent? Was she abducted? Was she sedated to the point that effectively she then died and they tried to cover it up? Did this guy jump out the back of the plane? Did he not? If he did, was he found? If he was found, where is he now? If he wasn't found, where's the money? Blah, 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 blah. Did the Zodiac killer make up the cipher himself? Was he in cahoots with somebody else that made up the cipher for him? Was he really that intelligent to fool all those people all those years? Blah, 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 blah. So it's the, I suppose, the unknown, but it's the, not the hook, but almost like you have an inkling, and I'm not going to say whether I do think or I don't think that he did jump out or he didn't jump out, or Jerry and Kate did it or didn't do it, or the Zodiac killer was the guy that they thought he was or not. But you always have that personal thought related to those sort of stories, and in a way, what's intriguing is you hope that you get the final outcome. You hope that at some point there's an irrefutable piece of evidence that says that's it. And we've gone back to previously we've spoken on previous podcasts about Jack the Ripper, the blood. We hope that there comes it was that guy. Now, at that point, you go, oh my God, sort of thing, it was him. But the intrigue of the story then gets lost a little bit, because part of the intrigue of the story is nobody really knows, do they?
Well, not only that, we also talked about it a little last week in terms of what we did in terms of the where, you, when. People are fascinated with the macabre, the darker side of life. We're all fascinated by it. And these three cases are the darker side of life that don't have an answer to it, which is what draws us in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I watched the Madeleine McCann documentary on Netflix, and I think it creates more questions than it answers, if I'm honest, and that's maybe that's where we're at with a lot of the cases, that certainly the three that we've spoken about, maybe there are more questions than answers, and are we ever going to find the answer? Maybe not. Maybe the answers aren't out there to find. I don't know. I hope we do. From a personal point of view, I hope we do get to find out what happened to Madeleine. I genuinely hope she's alive, whether she's well, happy, this, that, and that. I hope she's alive. I don't think she is, but I hope she is.
So either.
I hope she is. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion on that. I genuinely hope. I think just from being the dad and the father and having a couple of girls, I can't put myself in that position. So I genuinely hope she is okay. As I say, I don't think she is, but I hope she is, if that makes sense.
Indeed. And I think we can draw that episode then to a conclusion. So we don't know what we're going to be talking about next week, as is often the case. It'll be something different. It'll be something random. Let's fingers crossed after these last two episodes, it's probably a little bit more upbeat. But do you guys want to say your goodbyes? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I've enjoyed tonight. It's been interesting just listening to the stories about the unsolved crimes and I suppose the questions that are still left unanswered, and maybe hopefully at some point down the line we get to answer those questions. But if we don't, I've enjoyed talking about it. I've enjoyed listening to your guys' stories. So yeah, look forward to the next one, and catch you later.
Andy?
Yeah, I echo that. It's always interesting to see people not beating the system, but doing something that sounds so weird, but then getting away with it. Always piques the human interest. Like the DB Cooper one, it's got to be a Kevin Spacey film. It's got to be.
Yeah. Nowadays, I'm not sure Spacey will be cast, but that's another that's one for another episode.
Yeah, sure. A whole completely different podcast.
You could do the McCann one though.
And on that note, we will wish you all a good night and say until next time, when no doubt we'll have plenty more stuff to talk about. Take care.